Martin Archimbaud, later known as Father Martin, was born in a small town in southern France in 1952. His childhood unfolded in the shadow of an old stone church, where his father worked as a bell ringer and his mother sewed altar cloths for the parish. From an early age, Martin felt a strong pull towards sacred texts. He would spend hours sitting in the empty church, turning the pages of the Bible, absorbing stories of prophets and martyrs. Shadows from the candles danced around him, and in the silence he heard whispers he attributed to angels. His parents noticed his detachment but attributed it to piety. At school he was a quiet boy, avoiding fights and games, preferring solitude in the library or at the altar. Martin's childhood in the French town was steeped in the scent of incense and the sound of bells. Every morning his father woke him at dawn to help in the church. Martin cleaned the altar, polished the silver chalices until they gleamed, and watched sunlight filter through the stained glass, painting the stone floor in shifting rainbow colors. These moments felt divine to him, as though God himself lingered in the warm light. His mother taught him nighttime prayers, kneeling beside his bed, and he fell asleep to her soft recitations of the lives of saints. Sebastian pierced with arrows, Joan burned at the stake, Francis speaking to birds. But at night strange dreams came. Hooded figures standing in a circle around a blazing pyre, a voice calling his name over the crackle of flames. He woke in a sweat, heart hammering, but told no one, fearing the dreams were a sin he had not yet confessed. By the age of 15, Martin decided to dedicate his life to God. He entered the seminary in Lyon, where his zeal set him apart from his peers. His teachers praised his deep understanding of theology, but grew concerned about his visions. He read the works of Augustine and Thomas Aquinas by candlelight, debated with classmates about the nature of sin and grace, his voice always calm, yet fervent. His room was austere, a narrow bed, a wooden table scarred by years of use, and a plain wooden cross nailed above it. At night he rose for private prayers, knees aching against the cold flagstone floor until they bruised. Visions came less often, but with greater intensity. Once he saw an angel with a flaming sword pointing east across a dark sea. He interpreted it as a sign to carry the gospel beyond France. After his ordination in 1975, he was sent to Paris, where the city's clamor, horns, shouting vendors, the rumble of trains, contrasted sharply with the seminary's hush. In the parish chapel, Martin celebrated masses for a handful of parishioners, mostly elderly women and weary laborers. He visited prisons to comfort the condemned, sitting on the other side of iron bars while men confessed crimes too heavy to bear alone. In hospitals, he held the hands of the dying, feeling their pulses weaken beneath his fingers. Once he saw a child, no older than 8, starving on the steps of a metro station, ribs stark under thin skin, and something inside him broke irreparably. He began to doubt God's mercy, wondering why grace seemed so unevenly distributed. The visions returned with renewed force. Demons wearing the faces of the wealthy, laughing in gilded salons. Angels disguised as the poor, begging in rain-soaked alleys. He fasted for weeks at a time, drinking only water, until his vision swam and his body trembled. His mother's death in 1980 deepened the crisis. She faded slowly in a hospital bed, skin turning yellow, breath shallow. Martin prayed beside her for hours, but no relief came. After the funeral, under a cold November rain, he locked himself in the church for a week, refusing food, seeing shadows of the dead move among the pews and whisper accusations. The move to the United States in 1985 was involuntary. The church hierarchy saw missionary potential in him and sent him to Colorado, to a small parish near Denver. American life stunned him. Endless highways, neon-lit diners, the roar of pickup trucks, and a spiritual emptiness that felt louder than any city noise. He settled into a modest house attached to St. John's Church, a plain wooden building with peeling paint. The congregation was tough, miners coughing black phlegm into handkerchiefs, farmers staring at drought-cracked fields, families worn thin by hard winters. Martin preached endurance and redemption, but anxiety grew within him like mold. Visions showed mountains ablaze, rivers running red with blood, skies splitting open. He began keeping a diary in a cheap spiral notebook, filling pages with frantic descriptions of the coming apocalypse. In 1990, the scandal erupted. During a Sunday service, he pointed at a local politician seated in the front pew and accused him of corruption and secret satanic allegiance. The congregation turned away in stunned silence. The diocese relieved him of duties within days. Psychiatric evaluation followed. Schizophrenia with prominent religious delusions. Martin refused treatment, viewing medication and therapy as temptations from the devil meant to silence God's voice. He wandered across the states, sleeping in shelters, preaching on street corners beneath flickering streetlights. He gathered small groups of followers, the homeless, addicts, veterans broken by war, promising them salvation in the end times. Visions guided his path, from the neon chaos of New York to the freezing winds of Chicago, then steadily westward. In 1995, he set fire to an abandoned chapel in Nevada. In his mind, the building had become an idol defiling sacred ground, and the flames were purification. Police found him standing outside as the roof collapsed, arms raised, face lit by the blaze. Arrest, trial, commitment to a psychiatric clinic in California. There they forced pills down his throat that dulled the edges of his mind. Walls were white like fresh shrouds. Patients shuffled like ghosts under buzzing fluorescent tubes. Martin resisted, palming and flushing the medication whenever he could, and the visions returned sharper than before. Release came in 1997 under court supervision, but he vanished within days, hitchhiking back toward Colorado. In 2000, he learned of Mount Massive Asylum, a colossal, decaying psychiatric fortress rising from the mountains, funded by the shadowy Murkoff Corporation. He saw it as the prophesied place, a gathering of the rejected, a crucible for the final reckoning. He staged a public breakdown on a Denver sidewalk, screaming about demons tearing at his soul, and was committed voluntarily. The asylum was a labyrinth of echoing corridors, the air thick with disinfectant, mildew, and despair. Patients wandered like shadows under dim lights. Doctors in crisp white coats moved with mechanical precision, clipboards always in hand. At first, Martin clung to fragments of his old rituals. He broke pieces of stale cafeteria bread at night and whispered the words of consecration over them. But the experiments began soon after admission. Needles delivering clear serums labeled only with codes, sessions strapped to chairs while machines hummed and screens flickered. The chemicals burned through his veins, reality warped. Concrete walls pulsed like living skin. Floors tilted into black abysses. Patients' faces melted into snarling maws or serene martyrs. Martin stopped fighting the visions. He welcomed them as divine truth. He began marking the walls, first with stolen charcoal, then with fingernail scratches, finally with blood pricked from his own arms. Simple crosses multiplied into spirals, sigils blending scripture with nightmare geometry. Other patients noticed the quiet intensity in his sunken eyes. In the dim recreation room, they approached him wordlessly. He gestured, pointed, traced symbols in dust on the floor. A small, silent circle formed, broken men and women shattered by the same needles and electrodes. In 2005, the baptism happened in the communal shower block during a brief lapse in supervision. Cold water poured from rusted heads. Martin guided a trembling patient under the stream, pressed him down with both hands while murmuring fragments of ancient cleansing rites. The man thrashed, choked, then went limp. Guards arrived too late. Martin was dragged away in restraints and thrown into solitary. In the padded darkness, the visions detonated. Fire raining through cracked ceilings, backward sung psalms from choirs of the damned, the entire building tilting like a sinking ship. Years blurred into a gray smear. His hair and beard grew long and gray. His body wasted to sinew and bone. By 2010, he drifted through corridors like a specter whenever orderlies were distracted or high on diverted sedatives. The experiments had spiraled out of control. Patients now bore grotesque tumors, extra limbs, skin splitting like rotten fruit. Martin saw angels in their twisted forms, martyrs selected for the final hour. He planned in utter silence. Gasoline cans pilfered from maintenance closets, matches hidden in torn hems, a convergence point in the abandoned chapel wing that in 2012 the facility tore itself apart. Power grids failed. Alarms wailed then fell silent. Magnetically locked doors clicked open one after another. Screams multiplied into a continuous roar. Bodies littered hallways and spreading pools of blood. Amid smoke and flickering emergency lights, Martin walked unhurried, a crude cross of rebar clutched in one hand. His followers, some crawling, some lurching on ruined legs, trailed behind. The fire came later, not as punishment, but as the promised ascension. In his shattered mind, it was the last sacrament, the cleansing flame that would carry every soul upward. From the incense-scented mornings of a French childhood to the blood-smeared corridors of Mount Massive, Martin Archimbaud's life traced a long, inexorable descent. What began as gentle whispers of the divine ended in a deafening chorus of delusion and fire. The priest who once polished chalices with reverence became the prophet who anointed the damned with flame. In the ruins of the asylum, Father Martin at last found the congregation he had sought his entire life, a flock bound not by faith, but by shared ruin.